Hey, good morning, everybody. Kaboom! Yeah, that's right. Trump, 52% in New Hampshire. I think by the time, though, there were some just disagreements in the polling results I looked at late last night, early this morning. It appears that Trump got, what was it, a 15 point margin of victory. So that is decisive as politics go. That's the good news. For Nikki, the good news was she got into the 40s. I think, was it 42%?
Something like that. But what was crazy is how early the polls were being called for Trump. I mean, even the New York Times and the Washington Post, major publications were calling it for Trump, like, early in the evening, which is, kind
Yeah.
of.
I think though that Haley polled well enough that she will never go away. My view, I'm going to start calling her Sticky Nikki because all she's got to do is stick around, and she could be president. And what do I mean by that? The Washington or the Wall Street Journal had a pretty good rundown of the results last night in this morning's paper, and basically it said, there's good news for Trump, but there's trouble coming in November. Trump polled well among those committed to him, obviously, but independents who voted for him said in the primary, a significant percentage of them wouldn't vote for him in the general election. And independents have been the source of victory in recent presidential elections. And a party has to call or has to, hold at least 90% of its regulars to vote. And Trump's at only about 63% of those voting for him in New Hampshire persuaded that they'd vote for him again in November. So it's a solid performance for Trump. The papers report, and they report it because it's true, that no Republican candidate having won Iowa and New Hampshire has not then gone on to win the Republican Party nomination. So all things being equal, it's Trump in 2024 if you're a Republican. Now, why do I say all things being equal? I think Nikki is the Manchurian candidate in this case. I think she's playing the long game, and I think all she's got to do is be present and be solid and perform well in every primary that she enters, and she becomes potentially president in 2024. What am I talking about? Three barriers between now and November to a Trump-Biden race, and I'm referring only to Trump. First, he may or may not suffer a legal disability that would prevent him from running for president. I doubt seriously that the United States Supreme Court, in considering the Section 3 of the 14th Amendment insurrection clause, is going to rule in such a way that permits states to keep Trump off the ballot. But I've been wrong before, and regular listeners know I'm usually wrong at least once a day. I'm like a bad clock. You can count on it. And so, maybe the Supreme Court holds open a door to disqualification of Trump. I think that would be a huge mistake, but hey, anything's possible with the Supremes. So let's say he is legally disabled from appearing on the candidate. Given his age, what is he, 77 now? He looks as healthy as a wound up geriatric battle axe can be. But there's only so much that spray on tan in a sun booth can do if you're eating cheeseburgers and drinking Diet Coke like it's communion wine. And there's going to come a time when the ticker's going to stop talking and Donald's going to drop in his tracks. Does he do so before November? I'm not betting on it, but what if he did? And then there's always the possibility that violence rears its head in America. The anti-Trump or the never Trumpers are so vile. Violence in American politics is such a constant. It seems to me that it's possible that that Trump may or may not be alive come November. I'm not calling for his assassination, obviously. But I mean, we've had assassinations in American politics. People talk about the dissolution of the republic. People talk about civil war. Violence is in the air. And we're a match strike away from conflagration. So who knows with respect to that? But in either of those three scenarios, natural causes, death by other means, legal disability, the Republicans are going to need somebody to stand in 2024. And Haley had a lot of votes from independents in New Hampshire. The Daily Wire's Ben Shapiro was reporting that a lot of
A lot
Democrats
of votes
appeared.
from Democrats. in
Yeah,
New
a lot of votes from Democrats
but
in the New
also
Hampshire
vote for
primary.
Biden as well, though.
Well, yes and no. Yeah, that's true. I know, but realistically, put yourself in a polling place right now, Mike, and consider your family's future. For the next 4 years, if you had to choose between Joe Biden and Nikki Haley, what would you do?
I probably would abstain. I hate that I'm saying that.
Yeah, that's the coward's way out.
Yes, okay.
You have to choose or you're going to die. I've got this injection of truth
Man,
serum.
I don't know.
I'm
I
gonna
don't know.
stick
That's a
it right in
really
your
tough one
hindquarter
because
and
I think
press
so
the
little.
plunger.
Okay, so take that as an indictment of how little I think of each of them in their own
I
individual
get
right.
it.
I
But
like
if
se
you had to do it, if you
yes,
had
at
to
a very
do it,
serious level, at a very serious level, um, I think that I don't know. God, I don't I man, what a crazy scenario. I don't
well,
see
anyhow, let's move
anything
on. All right.
happening,
I
but you want me to say Haley, and I'm stuck with this phenomenon of the devil you know. And what we do know is exactly the charted course for the Biden administration. It's well known. The battlefield is drawn, the lines are drawn. We know that. But I'm absolutely not going to pull the lever for Biden in any respect. But then we have Haley on the contrary, and she doesn't even have a basic command of any of the issues. Not even a basic, a fundamental command. She was totally exposed by Vivek in the early primary activity in the debates. And so
well,
if you're talking about someone to stand in, I don't think that I think your sense that Haley is intelligent and playing the long game, I think was seeded as an idea by Vivek because he called that probably a month ago or more that the strategy from the Democrat donors is actually to fund the Haley campaign and that she is the Trojan horse. So it's the same in that circumstance. You're asking me to vote for the same person. Biden or Haley
possibly.
is the exact same vote, in my
Well,
opinion.
Biden, who's got, who probably has to have his head held up while an aide stuffs oatmeal into his mouth in the morning, or Haley, who can at least feed herself. I suggest that you'd pick the person with a pulse, and that it would be Haley. But we'll find out. And Vivek probably did put that idea in my head. And now that he has, I'm looking around and I'm seeing Reid Hoffman and others contribute to Haley, and Democrats flocking to her, and they do it for a reason. I'm looking at Maury's joke. He usually writes himself or herself, as the gender may be, in No Joking. Yeah, I get that, Maury. I live in Rosa Dolores congressional district in Connecticut. And so on those years that I've voted, and there have been years that I haven't, I write Clarence Darrow's name in for the 5th congressional district on the theory that even though he's dead, at least I'd know what I was getting. So anyhow, congratulations to Trump. It looks like it's going to be Trump in 2024. Sticky Nicky is going to stick around forever. I don't see a universe in which she becomes his running mate, but I do see a universe in which, if she plays her cards right, she's taking the oath in January of
Yeah.
2025.
T-girl jokes. If Big Mike runs, this is all moot. And of course, Norm, do you get the reference to Big Mike?
No.
Okay, online conspiracy theories abound regarding the natural born sex of Michelle Obama.
Oh, Big Mike. Yeah. Well, I mean, if that could be, I mean, hey, who knows? Anything can happen. Hey, who is running North Carolina these days, Mike?
That's
What
an
in the world? Mike sends me this long, regulation to read yesterday. And of course, I'm thinking he must have sent it to somebody else because I'd need a lawyer to understand all that stuff.
You did ask that. Did you mean to send this to me?
Yeah. And then he points out a specific provision, and it is sort of shocking. Break it down for us, Mike, and then let's tell folks what we think it means.
So I want to give credit to Stephen Horn, at Stephen E. Horn on X, and he's a follower of the stream, and we also follow him. He's a North Carolina-based independent journalist anchored out of what we call here in North Carolina as the Triangle, sort of the central part of the state revolving around
I
Raleigh.
thought that was the Bermuda Triangle, where good people from New England went and disappeared. Oh no! Oh no! 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 Okay.
That's far more beautiful. Except, so he puts this out, and as I do, I read it. I am
What is it? So, for listeners, the North Carolina Department of Labor hearing public comments on proposed airborne infectious disease policy, which would require every employer in North Carolina to mandate tracking, testing, etc., when any airborne infectious disease is designated. What's wrong with that?
right. Well, here in North Carolina, we suffered through the likes of Mandy Cohen and the current lame duck governor, Governor Roy Cooper, and their treatment of the COVID pandemic as a political opportunity at best. At worst, it was far in excess of any sort of government mandate. No valid metrics, just absolute unequivocal government overreach, top to bottom. And Roy Cooper and Mandy Cohen together were likely just more of a chameleon, right? You could look at them; they were putting their finger up in the air and seeing which way the political winds were blowing. And because COVID had such a strong backbone anchored in all of these expert classes of the WHO, the CDC, et cetera, they drove us into a state of lockdown and had all the phased lockdowns and social distancing, blah, 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 blah. So anything, and I track that on a daily basis. I would actually watch on a day-to-day basis the Governor Cooper's sort of check-in live, where he would take pre-planned and pre-vetted questions from reporters, over a conference call.
What is you're burying the lead? What does this have to do with the World Health Organization?
So anytime anything in North Carolina news comes up about the Department of Labor or proposed rulemaking regarding, mandatory masking, testing, anything regarding infectious diseases, it trips me up, right? I want to know what's going on. So I go to the North Carolina Department of Labor's
trigger
website.
Warning. Mike doesn't want to hear about infectious diseases.
I went to the Department of Labor's website and I found the proposed rule that was being discussed. And so I'll bring that up on the screen. And we can talk about exactly what pulled me to actually send it to you. And can you see that yet? No, not yet. Here we go. All right. So this is a proposed rule, and in North Carolina, any group can lobby for and propose a rulemaking change to the North Carolina Department of Labor or Labor Commission. So I don't want to ascribe any intent. And in fact, there are multiple sponsors of this rule, which we could probably get into in a later stream. But for purposes of this is what the public comment period was open to. And so what I'll do is I'll just scroll down to what I took specific issue with, and perhaps really the reason that we're even bringing this up to begin with. So section 0.0101, scope and application. If you scroll to subsection D, it says these rules in this subchapter shall apply to, and it says subsection 2, any airborne infectious disease designated by the governor of North Carolina, North Carolina General Assembly, U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services, World Health Organization.
Wait a minute.
Or
so the World Health,
are
you saying the World Health Organization can declare something an infectious disease, triggering a regulatory response in North Carolina?
That's absolutely right. So if we go back to what Stephen Horn was reporting on, saying that the North Carolina Department of Labor is hearing public comments on a proposed airborne infectious diseases policy, which would require every employer in North Carolina to mandate testing, masking, tracking, et cetera, when any airborne infectious disease is designated. And what this
if I have a law firm with 8 people in it, 8 employees, I'm supposed to become a public health organ. Is that my responsibility now?
Effectively, yes, right? Because in the first subsection there,
and I do that if some guy in Geneva says, I say how high if some asshole in Geneva says jump. That's the goal of this regulation.
That is absolutely
what the hell's going on in North Carolina.
That's absolutely the case. You got to, and I don't know. So this is the type of thing that if you're curious enough in your own state, you can keep track of these things and make sure you are paying attention to the independent journalists and the independent reporting on the ground. As I understand it from Stephen Horn, and also Luke Farley, who is, I guess, the candidate for North Carolina's labor commissioner this upcoming election. And he spoke in opposition to that, to this rule. But what I understand from looking at the conversation around this is that of the 60 or so comments that were able to be heard in the 2-hour period, that there were only 6 in support of this proposed rule and 47 against. So I don't want to say, hey, false alarm. It's not a false alarm at all. My question is very specifically, Norm, who is responsible for including the World Health Organization in this proposed rule? Why would some ostensible local organization lobbying on behalf of what they would consider to be public policy and public health give jurisdiction to an entity that has otherwise zero jurisdiction in the United States of America, especially over specific businesses within the confines of one of the states here in North Carolina. What business does the World Health Organization have dictating the acts, behaviors, forbearances, and ongoings of sovereign businesses in the state of North Carolina, where we do have a fruits of their labor clause, right?
We, this is a window into the future, and it harkens back to something we talked about earlier in the week. We talked about a survey that was commented upon by Steve Forbes, one of his organizations, that talked about how the elite, defined as those with professional degrees, income above a certain threshold, living in certain area codes, believe that ordinary Americans have too much freedom, that in order to best cope with global crises like climate change, we need to ration gasoline, we need to ration electricity, we need to have travel bans, and so on and so forth. And that's because they believe that the world can better and best be managed according to a set of metrics, which, if we apply to all, will yield a better collective response to global challenges. And this is this, and this is and it's my contention that article explains the support for Trump, that people want significance in their own communities, and they don't really want to be bossed around, pushed around, managed, or told what to do by distant entities, whether that be the federal government or the World Health Organization. So it's little clauses like this that I think that begin to habituate us to control by non-governmental agencies, and by the global entities. And I chuckle when I say that, because it's easy to kind of stick your tongue in your cheek and, hi, this is Alex Jones, and I'm warning you against the globalist conspiracy to insert stuff into your toothpaste. But it's real. And this is a little tell, Mike. It's a very significant tell. And I think your suggestion that people look at their local regulations to see how much of this stuff gets written in, gets scooched in at the margins, is an important task.
Don asked, "Does this North Carolina Commission have the power to do this?" I think that's a fundamental question, and as I led with, the proposed rulemaking can be promulgated by any entities, and there is a specific process by which the commission will propose that to the public for comment period, and then exercise its administrative discretion over whether to enact the rule pursuant to the authority designated to it by the North Carolina General
Answer
Assembly.
Dawn's question: why can't North Carolina agree to use that standard? What prohibits it?
Fundamentally, I would say a lack of due process, right? Anytime
Well,
that
they've had a hearing. They've decided to recognize the World Health Organization as an authoritative source of information, and they decide, after notice, public comment, and their the deliberative process, to adopt this standard. What would prevent them from doing that?
nothing except for the public comment and the pushback, the
Yeah,
voice,
no, I hear you. So it's a
the voice of
political
those
question.
who be to be regulated. So this is a letter. What I've got on the screen is a letter from yesterday from the general counsel and rulemaking coordinator for the Department of Labor. Her name is Jill Kramer. But I wanted to pull this up specifically because I referenced advocacy groups that were responsible for promulgating the proposed rule. Here they are: the Episcopal Farm Worker Ministry, the North Carolina State AFL-CIO, the Union of Southern Service Workers, Western North Carolina Workers Center, the Hispanic Liaison of Chatham County, El Vinculo Hispano, and the North Carolina Conference of the NAACP. Just very curious, just very, very curious collection of organizations promulgating a rule that would
Politics of virtue,
un-
all coming together for the common good. And if you disagree with them, you might be compelled to rethink your position because you're not playing good. You're not playing ball. It's that kind of stuff, and the reaction to it, that explains Trump's traction
absolutely.
in the polls, and the populist reaction to the politics of virtue, a top-down imposition of a vision of the collective good by those who seek the power to compel you to dance to their tune, because they know what the right questions are, and if they can acquire power, they can impose their answers on you. That's the bet, in my opinion. That's the lens through which to view politics in
Absolutely,
2024.
and the more that Vivek, put a spotlight on, totally disassembling the administrative agencies within the federal government. I've long said that extends well into the state government as well. I think the dominance of the administrative state is none more perverse in our history than it is right now. Think about the fact that this commission, this labor commission, defers to the federal OSHA guidelines. It defers in large part, its proposed rules, they say on their website, really only come from those that are proposed at the federal level. And then as a matter of course, they ratify those. So think about that from a federalism perspective. But then all of a sudden this shows up and we don't have an equal federal one that's being proposed. Now, we do have that treaty that's being discussed with respect to the WEF and the WHO about pandemic, like the pandemic treaty, but that's not the same as, OSHA or a federal labor commission dictating rules of individual states. Here, this seems somewhat emergent, and it's promulgated by all of those other advocacy groups that I listed. And for that reason is why I said the lack of due process. These are unelected bureaucrats put into these commissions, and these commissions are given constitutional authority to do rulemaking, to conduct rulemaking, to engage in rulemaking, but they're not elected by the people. The people that are enforcing these things are actually thinking about implementing these things they're not amenable to being elected or thrown out of a position based on public comment. So the North Carolina General Assembly long ago lost control over this agency as well as it did over many other agencies in the state of North Carolina that I won't get into right now. But
well, anyhow, let's keep an eye on that. I mean, I think it's an interesting. It's the tip of an iceberg, and that larger iceberg is the ability of large data, large bits of pieces of information, those who control it, to construct algorithms in the name of the public good, and to acquire power to enforce those algorithms on the rest of us for our own good. We can be compelled to be free. I mean, I don't know how many of you. I'm sure that Dawn has read Isaiah Berlin's pivotal essay, Two Concepts of Liberty, and are aware of the distinction between negative theories of liberty, that is freedom from the ability of another to tell you what to do, as it were, and visions of positive liberty, where you can be compelled to be free, where you can be compelled to do what's in your best interest. This is a fault line through which to view political discourse right now. And the politics of virtue, and the politics of global governance are that we know the answers. We have the metrics. We know what the right questions to ask are, and big data will give us the answer, and it's going to be your job to get along. And I think that is a powerful movement in our time. That's what I think of as globalism. I wish you could just say, I wish you could just say Vivek, because I mean, having to say Vivek or however you pronounce it, I feel like I've gone to some sort of.
Vivek. You can say whatever.
Vivek. Hey, Ramaswamy, I don't know the guy. We've issued him an invitation to appear on this show. He's thus far not even acknowledged our existence, thereby hurting both of our feelings, both the left one and the right one. But he did put a bug into Donald Trump's ear about central bank digital currencies. And for that, we owe him a debt of gratitude. And this is an easy story to follow after what we just talked about. The appeal of a central bank digital currency is it can replace cash instantaneous transactions, cutting out the middleman in international transactions and so forth. But the problem with a central bank digital currency is that it gives the ability to monitor purchases by purchasers, and it gives the ability to control the ability to purchase things. Central bank digital currencies, in my view, have the potential to talk about a managed and controlled economy. You've got your card, you're with your points on it one day, and you decide to go to the grocery store and buy a gallon of milk. And suddenly, you've got credits in the card, but suddenly you can't purchase milk that day. Why? Did an administrator decide that you're ineligible for purchases that week because you are a member of a disfavored group, or because of some act or omission that you have committed? And you think I'm exaggerating, but in China, this is exactly what's happening right now. There are social credit scores, and you are monitored by algorithms. What do you read? How long do you read it? Where do you go? What do you look at? Where do you shop? And you're scored. And, hey, Mike is a great citizen. He gets an 8.5 on a 10-point scale. Norm, not so much. He's a 4.5, 4.7 on a good day. Well, we've got limited access to goods, and we want to promote the good, and we want to promote compliance with our objectives. So let's say that people with a score below 5 some days can't purchase a scarce item. That means I don't get that because of how I am rated by an independent third party, in this case, the government. Mike gets access to it because he has a better score. Or in the alternative, in the name of diversity, equity, and inclusion, everybody gets a world historical social equity point score. If you're a Black woman with a disability, you get a 9.2. You get a high rating because you are the bearer of historic markers of injustice. You're Black, you're a woman, you've got a disability, and therefore, to make things equal, we're going to give you preferred access to goods and services. If you're a geriatric white male, you've had your run, you get a low score. And so to make sure that there's equal access to items, perhaps there'll be a pricing system where the the person with the higher score will pay $2 for the gallon of milk. The person with the lower score will pay $6, and the result will be a subtle income transfer or subsidization of the person with the higher social. I'll call it the DEI score, the diversity, equity, and inclusion score. And if you think I'm going on some paranoid rant, again, I would just point you to what's going on in China, and I would point you to what's going on in the social media world today. I think a central bank digital currency, if it should replace cash, which replaced barter, hey, I've got this apple. How many? I want that book. How many of these apples would you want for that book? That's a little inconvenient. What if you don't like apples? I still want the book. So we now have an abstract unit of value called dollars, which is a store of value and a measure of account, among other things. And I can say this dollar or this apple is worth $1. Your book is worth $2. So I give you $2 and instead of 2 apples, which you don't want, and I have the book. That makes commerce possible, but it gives sovereignty, or it gives power to the possessors of dollars to decide what to do with them. Central bank digital currency will give the government or a centralized body the ability to control stores of value and control access to goods and services. It's terrifying stuff.
Well, and it also lends the basic question of how would we know what money is even real anymore, right? We're running up our national debt in excess of $34 trillion. And I'm totally, I understand the criticism of the current economic framework and the current view of, fractional reserve banking, which we've even moved further past from than before. But it is, at least we still have the fiat currency that is physical in nature, right? That we can physically see it and exchange it freely between ourselves. There is a serious issue with the credibility of our institutions right now, as in considering the fact that, going back to 2008 and the massive bailout of the banks that orchestrated the collapse of the housing market, right, and spurred us into a worldwide depression, and the fact that what one person was eventually roped up and taken to jail, some schmuck over in Europe, right, that nobody knows his name. And we're in the post '08 meltdown years now, and the same people, the same institutions are driving us towards some sort of centralization of a digital currency. That is currency that you may no longer see, feel, touch, or exchange freely without the observation of some watchful eye of an observer, the IRS, any of these other big tech companies and corporations that would lobby our government to be able to understand how money moves, how to target advertising. Everything would be absolutely broken down into a hellscape of commerce. 100%.
And all in the name of efficiency, folks. Again, the dystopian process. We're going to ease transactions worldwide in the name of equity. Please just get rid of those antiquated dollars in your pocket. We'll give you a card, we'll give you points, and everything can be managed in a cashless, easy transactional manner that's best for everyone. Watch out. Hold your ankles when you hear that talk. Hey, so, if I don't know, every now and then a story just like, what? So 4 guys, they're watching the Kansas City Chiefs at one of their buddies' house. And 3 of them go out at some point into the cold, and one of them stays asleep on his couch for a couple days, and the 3 guys in the backyard turn up dead. Okay, professional pointer. You're the survivor. I mean, obviously, if you're one of the dead guys, you don't need any legal advice. Maybe you might need some spiritual advice, depending on your status with St. Peter. And for that, we would send you elsewhere. We would send you. Anyhow, we would send you elsewhere. But if you're the guy on the couch and law enforcement starts asking you questions, here's some professional advice. Plead the fifth. I'm not saying the guy on the couch did anything. I'm just saying he's got some splaining to do. And I would, and almost any explanation he gives makes him look bad. I mean, you slept for 2 days on the couch. Just what were you drinking that caused that, or using? You slept for 2 days on the couch. You never woke up and wondered where your friends were. What were you guys doing? So I take a look at the story, folks, that it's one of those head shaking things. And be careful if you're having any Super Bowl parties at the house. I mean, maybe you want to give everybody a lifeline or one of those little things on your wrist. Hi, I've fallen and I can't get up. But 3 guys go into a yard, none of them come back, and the guy on the couch is there for 2 days before he figures out something's wrong.
There's
Something's
bodies in his
here.
backyard. So this is odd to me as well. And the New York Post is very, quick to point out, Jordan Willis is the host of this party. Everybody was at his rented house, which,
Oh, Jordan, what were you serving?
well, he's also an HIV scientist, apparently. So there's also, I can already see where this is probably going to go. But, the local police department says that they're absolutely not investigating this as a homicide, but just
No, oh no, it's just a spontaneous death syndrome. No, maybe the UFOs did it.
Apparently
Let's
this
blame
guy-
the illegal aliens.
apparently one of the girlfriends of one of the deceased came over and had to, like, I guess, break a window or something to announce herself because she was there knocking. And this guy apparently shows up on his porch 10 minutes later after the police get there in his boxers holding an empty wine glass. I mean, this story is very strange. Very
Keep
strange.
an eye on this one, but Mr. Willis, please get yourself a lawyer. Do not try to talk yourself.
Oh, he
out
has.
of
The only one talking is his lawyer, but his lawyer doesn't seem to be very confident about anything that's going on here.
I don't know. It's just the weirdest story around. I mean, let's keep an eye on it just for fun's sake, if nothing else. Well, so we've survived yet another day, and it's Trump in 2024 if you're a Republican, unless something happens, in which case Sticky Nicky's got the answer. Mike, where do people find us?
You can find us every day, every weekday, that is, here at Law Pod Daily on X. You can find us at Law Pod Daily on YouTube. You can also find us at Law and Legitimacy over on Rumble. Rumble has been very active today. Hello to T-Girl. It's me again, Jackson. I think Freedom Lover is there. I saw Lawyer Will in there as well. And BTL, of course, always one of the first people in there to say hello to us and to exclaim from the rooftops that we are the best morning podcast in the world. I'll bet they were drinking Bud Light.
Junior's got it right. Hey, give me another one of those Mulvaney's. Oh, wait a minute. I'm not feeling too good. Well done, Junior. And we, of course, if you can't get enough of the sound of our dulcet tones, you can read our mangled prose. Where?
Well, at Law Pod Daily, lawpoddaily.com. Sign up for the newsletter. We do that every Monday. We'll be publishing a newsletter. Norm has pretty awesome content out this week. So if you haven't been to lawpoddaily.com, go scroll down a little bit. You'll get a pop-up to put in your email. Give us your email, subscribe to that, and we're not going to overwhelm you. It's going to be once per week. So that we can promise for the time being.
And we'll give you everything you need to know to keep your wits about you in this crazy, crazy world in 2024. So don't go to Super Bowl parties. Leave a note if you're going out into the yard. Don't vote for Sticky Nicky. Be careful with your central bank digital currency. And by all means, come back tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. where we'll tell you what's hot and what's not. Thanks for listening.
That's right. Last thing here. Thank you to everybody who downloads the audio-only podcast. I told Norm we crossed the 100,000 unique download threshold over the weekend. Didn't say anything about it, but the audio-only is uploaded every day right after this podcast. So thank you for the support over there. Give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, Overcast, Audible, wherever you find premium podcasts. Leave us a nice comment or leave us alone. Norm, I will see you tomorrow morning, my man.
AMF. That's adios, motherfucker. See you later.